In what might be a watershed moment in the debate around pornography, the United Kingdom has become the very first Western country in decades to pass a significant ban on pornography. This is something I have been talking about now for more than 10 years, that we can have one of two things. We can have a society and a culture that protects children, protects girls, protects women, or we can have a culture that permits weapons-grade poison pouring into the cultural groundwater from every screen. But we cannot have both of those things at the same time. Pornography has been fueling a rape culture in which a generation of young people, almost 2 generations at this point, have grown up weaned on sexually violent material coming from massive websites at increasingly young ages. And this has changed the way people relate to each other. It has changed the face of intimacy. It's changed the face of sexual relationships. And it's even changed the face of the way our society looks on the surface in ways that people aren't fully understanding, but relate directly back to the fact that the vast majority of the population is viewing porn almost constantly. Now, for years, what I've been saying is that pornography eventually will become an issue so large that governments will be forced to decide what to do about the fact that even children are viewing porn in massive numbers. And that the only thing we will be able to do is either ban pornography or accept that this is what our society looks like. And so we've seen countries and we've seen states kind of look at different ways to try and keep pornography away from young people. Over a dozen states have passed age verification laws. The Attorney General of France has advocated prosecuting pornographers. The United Kingdom implemented age verification earlier this year, but none of those half measures were ever going to cut it because the internet is the Wild West, and most countries actually have the constitutional capacity to ban what amounts to, in my view, hate speech also against especially young women, but hasn't been able to figure out how to do this in the age of the internet. In fact, many countries still have laws on the books that, if enforced, would eliminate much of what you see on the front page of every major porn site. And so the United Kingdom tabled a crime and policing bill in Parliament on November 3rd. And it includes an amendment that I'm pretty shocked actually that so few people have been commenting on this, because I think the story is hugely significant for a few reasons. The amendment criminalizes pornography featuring strangulation or suffocation, which is sort of colloquially referred to as choking porn, with legal requirements for tech platforms to block this content from all UK users. Now, both possession and publication, this is significant, of this kind of material is going to be a criminal offense. And the Department for Science, Innovation, and Technology stated that eliminating this very sadistic material is going to be a priority offense under the Online Safety Act. And to give you an idea of what a priority offense means, this puts it on the same level as child abuse material and terrorism content. So they're taking this very seriously, but they're not taking this more seriously than I think the problem warrants. I wrote a very long piece last year for the European Conservative magazine, taking a look at how pornography had been introducing sexually violent practices into our culture in real time. When I first started speaking publicly on pornography, I did public debates, public lectures at universities. I've spoken on this exact issue, pornography and rape culture, at Carleton University, even at Cambridge University in the UK. And I wrote an essay summarizing this called "Porn Culture Has Our Girls by the Throat." And in country after country, Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, people in Gen Z were talking about how this is now just expected. And when I started talking about this issue, sexual violence was becoming the norm, but this practice was almost totally unheard of, except in very fringe content. In the last 5 years, this stuff has become normal. And this has been covered in 2 major reports from the UK government. And it's those reports actually that have provided the impetus behind what's, again, the first major ban on some pornography in the Western world in a very long time. So for decades, the debate has basically been on whether or not pornography should be banned after the liberalization of the 60s, 70s, and to some degree on the 80s. And the public consensus for the longest time has basically been firmly on the libertarian side of that question. Pornography is sort of adult content and people should be allowed to consume it. Now, for the record, I don't think that is the case. I'm not a libertarian and I don't subscribe to that view. But when first the internet made pornography available in homes and the smartphone basically put a mini porn theater in the pockets of everybody who had one, and the almost omnipresence of digital screens with internet connections made it accessible to kids, the debate did begin to change. And I noted recently in First Things magazine that the debate had shifted away from, is pornography bad for society, to what should we do about porn? That basically no serious person was contradicting the evident reality that pornography is poisoning society, it's transforming society, and it's having extraordinarily ugly effects, especially for young people. Now, though, with this new UK ban, the debate is shifting from what do we do about porn, with the previous answer being things like age verification, to what genres of porn should be banned, which genres of porn should be made illegal. That, again, is a paradigm shift in this debate. It's a paradigm shift that I think is incredibly encouraging, especially for those of us who've been engaged in this debate for a long time. But anybody who cares about the health of our society should see what just happened in the UK as very good news. So a government review into pornography published earlier this year in February revealed that strangulation during sex had become a normal experience for young women. I have quoted this on this podcast before, but the Atlantic magazine noted that 24% of college-age American women had experienced this at some point in the last 6 months. The UK study showed that at least 4 in 10 women between the ages of 18 and 39 had already experienced it. A study 2 years ago, also put out by the UK government, found kids as young as 12 years old engaging in strangulation. And following the study, conservative peer Baroness Gabby Burton, for those of you not familiar with the lingo, a peer is somebody who is a member of the House of Lords, advocated for a ban on some forms of porn. And I thought her report was pretty good. Again, I thought that she should have gone further. Right now, we're finally shifting to what kinds of pornography should we ban. But if we're going to ban strangulation and choking pornography, as we should, there is a very long list of incredibly perverse things that should also make that list for all the same reasons. But here's what Burton said, and listen closely to what how she words her response here. The evidence is overwhelming that allowing people to view legal but harmful pornography like choking sex, violent and degrading acts, and even content that it could encourage child sexual abuse is having a damaging impact on children and society. The law needs to be tightened with more proactive regulation of online platforms. Okay, so she's saying legal but harmful. That is a very interesting standard, because this is what I've been saying for years, including in public debates, that if it is poisoning society, if you get to choose between a society in which sexual violence is prohibited, frowned upon, and stigmatized, or a society in which sexual violence becomes mainstreamed due to widespread pornography use, that things we used to objectively recognize as violence are now being stuck into the gray area between sort of consent and non-consent, then we should be looking seriously at restricting all kinds of different pornography. I would advocate to start off with just a ban on hardcore pornography entirely. But it's becoming so common now to get choked or strangled in an intimate relationship that Gen Zers don't even discuss it, because pornography is normalized in mainstream sexual violence, and girls in particular are just expected to live with it. And let me make one other point here, because some people will say, look, different people are into different things, blah, 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 blah. I'm coming from a Christian perspective here, so I object to that on multiple different, for multiple different reasons, pardon me. But there's another point I think that's really important to note here. When we're talking about the kinds of behaviors that are being mainstreamed by pornography, much of it is no longer even sexual violence, which involves violent intercourse. It's sexualized violence, which means it's just people hurting other people, but sexualizing it, being aroused by it. Many of the forms of pornography now that young people are starting off on, that are on the front pages of sites like Pornhub, just show women being abused Sex has nothing to do with it. And people are being aroused by this. We're rewiring the brains of a generation. And Conservative Member of Parliament, Alicia Kearns, actually made this point on X. She was celebrating this law, which again, I think is worth celebrating. Here's what she wrote. Strangulation during sex is considered the second most common cause of strokes in women under 40. Violent pornography has normalized it, and that's why I laid amendments to ban non-fatal strangulation in porn. Well, fatal strangulation is murder, so that sort of goes without saying. The government voted against it twice. Now they've accepted it must be banned. It shouldn't have taken months of delay and political pressure to get here, but I'm relieved the ban is coming. This is exactly right. The UK government is a Labour government, keep in mind. They are a left-wing progressive government. They are the kind of government that supports all kinds of sexually revolutionary activities and behaviors and lifestyles, but even they're recognizing pornography, again, it's weapons-grade content that's transforming society. And the comments underneath this member of Parliament's post were pretty heartbreaking too. Women talking about how common this is now. And so Kearns added, we must ban when there is a threat to the safety of members of our society. Too many young girls tell me this is normal and expected of them. I have been saying this for years. The reason I emphasize this is because I have been accused of exaggerating, of hyperbolizing this because I'm a prude who just wants to ban all pornography. And the reality is that people didn't see what was coming because they were ignoring the problem. They were ignoring the problem. And we forced a generation of young people to grow up in a society shaped by this garbage because we prioritized the sexual fetishes of males and of adults over the safety of children, of women, of girls. And so a generation weaned on basically Pornhub content has seen this kind of stuff as normal. I'm going to edit sort of in real time the things she said here, but Layla Micklethwaite, who's an anti-Pornhub activist who's done brilliant work on this, she's also been beating this drum for 5 or 6 years. She said that on this major site, she saw homemade videos of women wearing no clothes, being suffocated in plastic bags, of being choked, strangled. It was often totally unclear if there was any consent. The videos would end before you would know if the women lived or died. And she says, we've needed a bill like this for a long time. It's really disgusting to me how few politicians are willing to take a stand on this. I think that it would be interesting to find out what their internet search histories look like, quite frankly, because here in Canada, when Member of Parliament Arnold Viersen put forward a motion to study the connection between sexual violence and pornography, the motion passed unanimously, but before the report could come out, most of the evidence was spiked in committee. They said you can only use academics, you can only use people with specific credentials, and so even testimonies from battered women's shelters, for example, were eliminated. I read through those reports, and the only reason you would have spiked those testimonies is if you wanted to blunt the impact of the report. And so I think people who have been avoiding dealing with a problem that young people have had to live with should answer some really difficult questions. It's important to note here, the anti-porn side of this debate has won not because the establishment is embracing sexual morality, which is something I predicted in my book, How We Got Here, a guide to our anti-Christian culture. I have a whole chapter on pornography, and I said eventually we're going to start looking at restricting this stuff, not because people are going to get more sexually moral, but because the damage of pornography is simply going to be too excruciating to live with in the long term. And we're seeing that fallout. The fallout is so manifestly obvious now that only a malevolent idiot would say that it doesn't exist. And there are some such malevolent idiots online. Those people are responsible for the kinds of things that are happening in high schools. Those kinds of people should be treated with contempt because they are, again, prioritizing the lusts of adults over the safety of children and of girls and women. Now we are seeing a shift in country after country. Governments are treating porn as a crisis, and they're attempting to respond. France, Spain, some states in the United States, the United Kingdom, other countries. I detail those countries both in First Things magazine earlier this year, but also in my book, How We Got Here, which if you want a full introduction to what porn has done to our society and what to do about it, I'll make a shameless plug to purchase that book. But the UK porn ban is the first legislation of all the different things proposed that specifically criminalizes a popular form of pornography on the basis that even if it is consensual, which is a stupid standard, it harms society. That precedent can be clearly applied to many other forms of pornography, and as I've often argued, hardcore pornography itself. And indeed, some have already indicated that maybe more bans might be coming. So this ban just passed. or it was tabled on November 3rd. And then Baroness Burton, who I referred to earlier, member of the House of Lords, went on BBC Radio 4 and said, this is just a first step. We need to be doing more. Here's what she said. I thought her quote was, again, very encouraging. It's only the beginning, as there's still so much violent pornography that is completely legal in the online world and completely illegal in the offline world. The government has to use this as a first step to try and address that balance. She's 100% right. I could not agree more. Again, we can have a culture that protects children, girls, women, and of course, yes, boys and men as well, or we can have a culture with widely available pornography. We cannot have both. The UK is making the first step towards making the right choice, and we should be following this closely. We should be asking of our own parliamentarians, congresspeople, senators, whatever country you're in, whatever the politicians are, point to them and say, what's your excuse for not passing the same legislation? What's your excuse for permitting strangulation porn when girls in their early teens are being choked by their boyfriends because they were raised on the pornography that you, as the leaders of the country, have decided to permit because you have prioritized sexual freedom and some garbage form of libertarianism over the safety of young people? This is a real opportunity. And for the first time in quite a long time, I think that we are seeing the first step being taken to bans on pornography being passed, not only in the UK, but elsewhere. Because it has been clear to those of us who are interacting with the culture, speaking to young people on pornography, and educating on this topic that this day was either going to come or we were going to have to live in a society where intimacy increasingly looked incredibly dystopian. As I've said in a previous episode of the Bridgehead briefing, this is one of the reasons for the great gender divide, that pornography has programmed a generation. And so start pushing your politicians. If they can have this in the UK, we can have it in Canada, we can have it in the United States, and this should just be a first step because a new standard has been set. If it objectively harms society and makes society unsafe for people, we should be taking legislative action. If you found this helpful, please do like it. Please comment on it. Please do share it around. We thank you very much for your time once again, and we hope you were as encouraged by this episode as we were. Thanks for listening.